Hi, welcome everybody to the 2 o'clock Toolbox Topics. Today we are having Deb Roberts, Director of Academic Program Review, Warner Bair, Dean of Allied Health, Behavioral Science and Public Services, and Tom Robertson, Dean of Career Applied Technical Division, and they will share with us leading effective advisory committees. Welcome.
Well, thank y'all for participating today. I know I'm probably the last meeting between you and home. So we want to make it engaging. And I've got two of my favorite colleagues, Warner Bair and Tom Robertson, who do amazing things with business and industry and incorporating that feedback into their programs. And so they're going to really be the stars of this show. I just get to tell you what will make our program advisory committees, what documentation and such makes us audit worthy. Okay, so help me help you make this a success. And please get your devices out. We are going to have an interactive portion to this session. All right. So why do we have advisory committees and what are the rules? So the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board does provide rules around advisory committees and the requirements for those in their fairly newly published career and technical education guidelines. So I'll just read this short snippet. But the role of an advisory committee is to, one, help a college document the need for a workforce education program. And two, to ensure that the program has adequate resources and a well-designed curriculum to provide students with knowledge, skills, and abilities essential for employment. So that's why we're here, right? We want these students to get the education and the skills they need to be employable and to stay employed, right? So think those technical skills, those soft skills, those durable skills, that's the kind of information that we need from our advisory committee. So they're so important. So program advisory committees, how do we document that? Where is our central repository? So each of our programs have program folders in SharePoint under the institutional effectiveness division. So we have a new and improved SharePoint with some resources, and I'll share those with you later on in the session. But you can see a picture here if you navigate to academic affairs, institutional effectiveness, over to program advisory committees. There is quite a bit of information there about the why and the how we document that and the resources you need, such as membership lists and the kind of information that we try to gather for those companies and participants, and your meeting template, because it is important to adequately document that conversation and what we're doing to follow up on that. All right, so our first interactive piece of this show that's on the road today. If you use that QR code or go to slido.com, enter this is your Slido number and then the passcode below. What do you think? Which of the following is true in the United States? Come on, folks. Ooh. All right, are we all submitted? All right. Now, all of the above. So we spend a lot of time in meetings, right? And I don't know about you, but I've been in meetings where I'm like, this could have been an email, right? And so we want these meetings to be meaningful. We want them to keep coming back and we want to hear what they have to say. So in knowing how much time we spend in meetings, we've got to change how we organize them and how we show their value, right? Membership list. because it's important to have the right membership, right? We want folks that are engaged, that are interested in our program, are committed to supporting our students, supporting our deans and our faculty through visits with their classrooms, through equipment donations, and just providing, that real life experience to our students, and ensuring that we have the right programming, the right equipment, the right everything to adequately prepare our students for what they're going to see when they go to work. So membership list. You guys all probably had an action item in your curriculum team day action item list to send me or send to program review at lonestar.edu your membership list and your minutes. So we do update this twice yearly. We would like to capture as much information as we can from on the companies that are being represented in your advisory committee. So things like their name, their title, what company they work for. So I love that some of them use their Gmail address, but where do they work, right? We need to know where they're coming from and who they're representing. A phone number, a good email address, how many years they've served, their company size, company website, whether they're a council chair or in a membership role. So as much information as we can gather about those members, the better. And we do have a template for that in SharePoint. It is a spreadsheet. It is very simple, but we get a lot of the Outlook distribution list sent to us, and they really don't give us any information. So that doesn't help us be audit worthy, right? Because we don't know where they're coming from. All right, here's another one. What are the coordinating board requirements of advisory committee meeting minutes? That's cut off. Got eight folks in here. All right. So as a matter of fact, each of these items is required. So their attendance, their name, their title, their affiliation, whether they're present or absent, right? A chairperson's signature. Meeting minutes must be signed. If we are audited and we turn in our minutes, they're going to ding us for not having signed minutes. So we must have them signed. We must capture their action items, and we need to provide evidence of follow-up to their previous industry input. That was not actually in the coordinating board's template, like 2 years ago. And we had a Perkins audit, and because we receive federal funds, that does open us up to, they can look at any of our records. Advisory committees are a hot topic when it comes to coordinating board coming in and looking at our records. And so that was one of the things that we had, a comment on is there was no evidence of follow-up in some of our minutes. Well, it wasn't in their template. We weren't great at capturing it, right? So we have a new and improved template that includes that so that we are audit worthy when they come in to look at those. Quorum met. So it's important 50% plus one, right? And then recorder signatures. So whoever is taking those minutes, they should have their signature on there as well. So what is the purpose and what do we expect these advisory committee members to do, right? And what makes a good advisory committee member? Well, we know that we need engaged industry, right? But the function of the advisory committee should be to evaluate the goals and objectives of the program curriculum, establish workplace competencies for the program occupation, suggest program revisions as needed, evaluate the adequacy of existing college facilities and equipment, identify local business and industry leaders who provide students with work-based learning experiences, employment and placement opportunities, assist in the professional development of faculty, and assist in promoting and publicizing the program to the community and to business and industry. Now, that is what the coordinating board has in their career and technical education guidelines. And so that's the bare minimum, right? So we want to make sure that they are looking at our goals and objectives, that they are the driver of our curriculum. So we share with them what we have, but we definitely need our industry partners to be really engaged in that and sharing with us what makes a successful employee so that we can then tailor our curriculum, right, to make sure that our students are prepared. I know Tom has a beautiful facility over at North Harris, and I know that they offer tours nearly every meeting. And industry partners, they love to tour our facilities. They love to see what we're doing. I used to be a part of doing bus tours. And so I would have, we really kind of tailored those to our ISDs. Those folks love to come and see our facilities. And we have beautiful facilities. So let's show them off and let's get their input on that. Because that also, I've seen, and these gentlemen can probably speak to their experience with this, but once they're in our labs and they see, oh man, we could upgrade this, they're probably more likely to put some dollars to it, right? Or help with some donations or sourcing some of that stuff. And then there's no better advocate for Lone Star College than the boots on the ground. The people that you don't even know are the ones that are our biggest supporters and drivers in the community. And so they are at the chamber meetings talking about us. They are at their companies talking to their colleagues about what their high schoolers are going to do. And have you seen, we saw this beautiful facility. They're really important in promoting your program. All right. So all of that work that we're doing, all of that input, how do we document that? We document in our minutes, right? And we've got to be very specific in our minutes. They are required for each of the 2 meetings per year. So the coordinating board says once a year. Lone Star College takes it a step further and says twice a year. We should be meeting in the spring and the fall. Some programs try and meet in the summer. Timing days is really up to the program. But many times, we have this rule about meeting twice a year, and we're lucky if we get one, right? So we all know that if we say once a year, we may get some email communication, right? And so 2 meetings per year and minutes for each of those. The minutes template is in SharePoint, and I'll show you the link to that. And if multiple programs share an advisory committee, each program must have dedicated time on that agenda, and notes must reflect that discussion. Okay. Now, I know Tom can give a great example of that, and I'll keep pointing at you because you really, truly, you guys are the star of the show. He does an amazing job of pulling industry in that can represent multiple areas, and they have their dedicated time on their minutes. And those action items are documented, and that follow-up is documented. So he does a beautiful job of that. And then minutes must be signed before submitting to program review at lonestar.edu. And I read those to make sure that they're audit worthy. And if they're not signed, I'm gonna call you up and say, hey, these are beautiful, but I need a signature. Okay. Because that's my job, is to make sure that we stay compliant, right? So who's your contact? We have one contact here. Program review at lonestar.edu. I'm Deb Roberts. I serve as the director of academic program review. So I make sure that those are filed away on SharePoint, and we prepare a report for the vice presidents of instruction each semester so that they can stay apprised of what's happening and what programs are meeting and who's out of compliance. Nope. So then our next question, and this is really going to help these folks answer questions, is what are your biggest advisory committee challenges? What are those pain points? And I know I'm looking at my colleagues in continuing education. I know that this is pretty new for you. What I believe 2 years ago, we started the push to inventory some of our non-credit programs. And with that, when you inventory and you now receive funding, you now are open to that same level of oversight. And so many of our CE programs must now have documented advisory committees. Not to say that they didn't have industry input before, but it wasn't documented in quite the same way. And so these nice ladies have been working hard, I know, to either partner with their credit colleagues where it makes sense or develop new advisory committees. So if you are from a credit program that has a related CE program, I strongly encourage you to get to know your CE colleagues and welcome them because their programs provide a great service to our students and to the same employers. And so where we can partner, we should. Okay. Do we just have 2 challenges? Man. I mean, yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I've given you the what and the why and how do we stay compliant, but these 2 gentlemen are going to share, like, they're the ones that really make it work. I've led focus groups and competency analysis meetings with industry. I've recruited for some of these folks, but I've never led an advisory committee. And so I cannot speak any more highly of these 2 gentlemen who are going to share with you their successes and lessons learned. Warner?
Oh, wow. Well, she built me up. Now I really have to try hard not to let her down, right? Yes, as Deb said, I'm Warner Bair. I'm at Sci-Fair. I'm over the health occupations programs at Sci-Fair and the public services programs there, which is how I work with advisory boards, right? We had some challenging questions, so maybe I'll address those first. Both of those questions were kind of similar in how do you find industry partners in your area, and how do you get them to your meetings, right? And those are important because the whole idea of an advisory board is to actually engage with the industry and have those people there regularly. One of the things that we've done in our different areas, right, which includes nursing and sonography and rad tech, is we actually rely on a lot of our alumni. Right. So we have students who come through our programs, they'll have graduated, they're getting jobs out in the hospitals and the clinics. And so we'll touch base with them, right? Even 6 months after they're gone. And we'll say, hey, at your new job, you're now in the industry, by the way, so you can come in. But also if you know people that you're working with, obviously our alumni are familiar with the program, right? Because they've graduated from it. And so then they can kind of help network at some of those clinical sites or fire departments to help kind of bring people in. So that's been one strategy that I think we have found to be really productive. Another strategy that I use is I'm also out in the community from time to time, and I'm in hospitals, and sometimes I'll be meeting with CNOs or chief nursing officers or whatnot. And I always ask when I'm at their place, which I always try to do, by the way. Sometimes they'll say, well, let's do a WebEx, or we'll come over to SciFar. And I'll say, no, let me come to you, because that gives me that opportunity to be able to say, hey, I know we're meeting about X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the meeting, I always work it in. If we have an advisory board, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Would you or someone on your staff be willing to kind of join us the next time around, right? To really start to create those relationships, because ultimately that's what the advisory board is really about, is creating those personal relationships with people that are in the industry, right? And then once you get them, how do you get them to come? Well, I don't know if there's a magic answer for that, really. Food helps, right? It does, but then you have to get them committed to drive to your campus too, right? That's really a challenge, because the whole point of having these people come is that they're in the industry, which means they're also really busy at what they're doing, right? So it's really kind of discipline specific, right? So for example, for the medical assisting advisory board, those meetings are always in the evening, and they're always virtual. And we usually meet like 7:30 at night, run till about 8:30, 9. Everyone that allows all the medical assistants who mostly work in all the different clinics around that you see. That's mostly a 8 to 5, 7 to 6 kind of job frame. So we try to do it virtually, so everyone can get home, right? Get a little something to eat, and then jump on their computers for the advisory board. So that works out really well for them, right? But then other disciplines, they do a lunch meeting, right? Some people have time during lunch, especially if you're doing something that's more business oriented and less clinical. A power lunch kind of advisory board meeting can work, right? Virtually works, right? But there is power in getting together, right? I think we're all seeing that after COVID is that it helps. So for the sonography team, like Deb was saying, we do it twice a year. Theirs is always virtual in the fall, and in the spring we always get together. We do have a little good food. The fire sciences folks, they always do barbecue. That's their thing, right? And they do a lunch meeting with all of the fire chiefs and all the different fire departments. So it's really understanding your industry, what their working times are, and then kind of being flexible with when you do that. So I think that addresses couple of tips and tricks for those two biggest issues. I have a couple of things to share before I turn it over to Tom, but does anybody have another question or concern? Or it's like I tell my students when I teach, if you don't have questions, it means I'm either doing really well and you understand everything, or I'm so terrible that you don't even have any questions to ask. But I'm going to go with the first one because it makes me feel better about myself. So I have just a couple other points that I wanted to make in my notes here. One of the questions I get asked a lot with advisory boards is how many people should be on the advisory board, right? And that also varies from your industry. You may have a very focused discipline, right? Like it may be a very small niche area, right? You may not have a huge amount of board members, right? Or it could be a very varied area, right? Like sonography or nursing, right? There are so many different levels of nursing when you think about, everything from a licensed vocational nurse all the way up to a bachelor's nurse, and then all the different areas in healthcare that nurses work. So if you have a field that's that wide, you may really want a lot of people from different parts of the industry to be very representative, right? So again, kind of take a look at your industry and in your needs, right? And I think that's the final point that I'll make. As you're setting up your board, as you're setting up your time, as you're working things, think about what you need from your members, right? I mean, we know the requirements. Deb did a great job with that. We know we need industry people, but do you need industry people to advocate for you? Right? Because that really does help, right? I mean, I could go to the VPI and I could be as charming as I possibly can be, which is not very much, by the way, and say, hey, I really need a new sonography machine, or I need to update some of our X-ray tech equipment because it's not industry standard anymore. It's one thing if I say that, but it's another thing if I go, hey, we just had an advisory board meeting and we talked with a lot of people who are working in the X-ray clinics across our service area, and they've all upgraded to this latest and greatest machines that have AI capabilities built in. This is what our students are going to be working on. Here's why we really need to prioritize this purchase, right? And so that's a very powerful advocacy that these advisory boards can give to you, right? But you may have other needs that you need. You may need input on your curriculum development if you're developing a new program, for example, right? And so think about the needs that you have, work with the folks in the departments, the faculty, to find out what their needs are, and let that help drive you as you put your boards together. And if a board has been around a while too, don't be afraid to kind of reevaluate your needs, right? Because program needs shift as programs go through the various years. Once it's established, you may have a more established thing. You may not need equipment. Maybe you need input in other areas. So really do think about, I don't want to say rotating members of the advisory board, but do think about maybe bringing in new people to get new perspectives, right? And then I guess I lied. I do have one other thing. Deb talked a lot about Lone Star requirements, and she also talked a lot about the state coordinating board requirements. Almost all of your programs are probably going to be accredited through another accreditation agency, right? A national accreditation body, right? And in healthcare, there's a bunch of them, right? They also will probably have requirements for your advisory boards, right? So once you've taken a look at Lone Star's requirements and the state's requirements, dive into some of that accreditation, standards to make sure that you're meeting their requirements as well. Because oftentimes, especially in healthcare, we have to have survey results from our advisory boards. We have to present our metrics to our advisory boards as part of our meetings, and all of that's checking off our accreditation requirements. So make sure to take a look at that too. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. It just depends on what you need, right? Like, so for example, like I just mentioned, we have a bunch of stuff that we have to go through to meet our requirements for accreditation. So we'll put all that on our agenda because we have to turn in our agenda to the Lone Star folks. We have to turn it into our national accreditation. They have to see in the agenda that we've checked the boxes, right? And whatnot. So what we've typically done is left room at the end of the agenda to add agenda items by people who are at the meeting. Right. Because sometimes when you send stuff back out, you don't get it back in time. And so, so that's typically what we do. But we always make sure, obviously, that the people at the meeting, either virtually or in person, have that open forum time to talk about what they want to talk about too. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. One of the statements that you made or questions was, how do we make the advisory member show up? I find that when we ask people to volunteer or to give up their time, I always find that it's on the other side, it's what is it in, what do they have, what's in it for them, right? So most of the time, when we have, let's say we need an advisory group, I think that the best source is who's hiring, right? Because the people who are hiring, like let's say in the medical industry, Memorial Hermann, or we'll say, I want to hire all your new rad techs, your sonographers, your RN. I want to be in the front. And I'm sure you've been in that position where you say, well, we need an advisory, because they'll usually tell you, this is the latest, this is the skills, the equipment that we're working with. And so, I've seen before where the deans will say, can you be in our advisory committee? It's a great source of new members. If you have to update, is who's hiring in your specialty right now?
Yeah.
Because they want to hire your students. They want to be front of the line. And if that's the case, then help us.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Become a part of our advisory committee. And most likely when you ask them, they'll say, if this is what it'll take for me to be in front of the line to hire, they'll do it. Yeah.
Those are really good points and good strategies with that. And the other part that's really great about having them come to people who are hiring, come to the advisory board meetings is there's the skills you teach in the curriculum, right? There's the skills that are in the classroom and the learning outcomes, and it's curriculum day. So we've all talked all about those. But then there's the other, I know some people call them soft skills or other things that employers are looking for, right? And I always like to ask employers those types of things, especially within an advisory thing, to make sure that we get to capture that. But let me turn it over to Tom now because he has a lot of great stories and advice as well. And I don't know how to advance the slide here.
But one did a great job. One thing that I would like to put on and how they come back. Like when they want to be part of it and they want to be from hierarchy. And that was it, the company, the lighting driving for when I let them know that they have carte blanche. This is their department. We're just running it. It's there. And so then they get a little bit of leadership in it and they feel like they're home. Put the onus back on them. They're going to do it. And they're going to call one day and say, hey, I get 3 of your team. Say, they'll definitely say, tell you, I want 3 of your best, right? They don't want the low end, they want 3 of your best. And we all have our different ways of that. One of the things that I would tell them, come in, see them in the lab. I can't think them, but you're a member of the advisory committee. Come in, watch a lab, sit in a class, sit in a couple. Then ask for the resume. Oh, yeah. The applied technology. So that wonderful is that automotive control, robotics. Like I'm still missing one. No, not really. That's one. So we have a lot of employers all the time. I didn't say that every day. 3 or 4 times. Employers will call me because that's on the website. Say, hey, so do I. I need you to be a life certificate. It's like I said, come be a part of their stuff. Or if you can't, can you send your service back? Can you send someone from the on timing, like Warner was talking about, it is. Try during the COVID time, we try to let that. No, we're handshakes and nods and stuff. So we found out that the afternoon lunch and my directors all make sure that I put them to lunch, whether that's lunch, my choice, I can do their choice. This is one of my directors and instructors there. So this is not going to make those choices where they want something. Or if they need people, they know the people call. They call them. I need to admit something. I made a mistake this time. Because they all don't go well. You're going to have a life. The problem was the energy. So the way mine because I do multiple, trades that, so I would, my electrical and that, my construction. Go over that, I would do that. And so I'm not going to talk about electrical, I'm not. That I'm not. I welcome everyone. And sometimes they have multiple programs under that, so like my director on college, he's got that now. So people turn it over. So in doing so, what I found as in opposite, energy from their class, their class, home, talking about. So there's where it allows that. That there's quality by here. So I would challenge you doing the most passionate, the most personable person doesn't have to be, but we've all got somebody that passionate about it. That probably doesn't better than do it more than but so that then hopefully like pretty much you right off of the top. So get energetic one, not just for the lunch, but the fellowship and network. Because they should be networking out. We've got 3 cross-functional programs that all work side by side. And so it works for those programs. So that's what.
This is just a question I've about advisory committees. When you said that sometimes it becomes thin, perhaps the people attending. So is it set up where if it becomes thin, you have like a another list where you could kind of slip somebody in, or whoever you started with, that's going to be the committee till the end?
You mean on the participants?
Yeah, the participants. Like, let's say you always have like 5, and then you're saying it's becoming thin. 2 people show up. If you know.
And so that's where we're always, every employer that comes to the campus, it's not a set in stone list. I would love that if we had that set in stone list, but the reality is that's what we get. The 5 people in the industry that wanted the 3 months, that wanted to stay out on one thing. So we're constantly changing and adding, and some people stop showing up. And my rule of thumb is if they miss 2 meetings, I'm not take long. Right? And then if they come back and say, hey, I haven't got it. Oh, I'm sorry. And they show up. So it's an evolving list. I really don't think that a quality advisory committee with the same body. So 5 people need to have 2 or 3 other people show up. You would get more at the same time. So anybody that shows up into campus and says, hey, I want to hire your students, or hey, how do I do this? I've already got my 5 minutes to take up my last.
Oh, so I can twist your arm next time.
with a lot of, we have a lot of the people in the industry for construction, obviously electricity and another trades. And we meet every 2 Saturdays. And at least they come right now 25. The person they used to do the training pass away. And before we have 65, 70 people. Now we have around, it's building up again. And then but there you can find, because there are many owners of the companies, we're more than happy to help you to find more people for you. Okay.
Okay, pretty good.
All right, thank you. All right, so just a little bit about the resources available. We do have an advisory committee handbook that outlines what the coordinating board requires, and then the additional pieces that Lone Star College really looks for. We have a one-page information sheet. So as you're recruiting people, we have an information sheet to kind of give some guidelines on that. That was one of the things that Natalie in continuing education, she's like, I've never recruited for an advisory committee. What do you have? And I said, well, let's see what ChatGPT said. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, we wordsmithed it and we put something together. So we do have that there. And a quick guide, we have that membership list template and a minutes template. So please take a look at that on SharePoint. And if you have questions or you see a need for something that would really aid you in, say, recruitment or explaining the why and the what's in it for me to industry, let me know, because if you see a need for that, if that would be beneficial to you, it'd probably be beneficial to one of your colleagues. And so I'm here to try to be the wind beneath your wings to help you guys and support you and ensure that we have successful and effective advisory committees. So with that being said, that's the end of our presentation. I want to thank these two gentlemen and thank you all for sharing your time with us this afternoon.